last week, I was talking about how I heard a talk where this teacher had kind of did this cool trick where he divided all of the various meditation techniques in the entire world over the past 2,600 years into one of two orientations or methods or models. One being the control model and one being the release model. And I loved that because I like simple. So last week we did the control model, talked about it, and we'll do a slight recap. But as some astute observers noted, I'm very obviously a bigger fan of the release model, probably because I'm one of the world's laziest people. So when I was writing down the notes for the control model last week, okay, I'm good. I've been like frantically writing all day about the release model. Because there's so much to say about nothing, much ado about nothing, right? So here we go. Here's the recap, y'all. So first, remember from last week we were talking about different ways of slicing the pie, different ways of conceptualizing practice, right? Language, like just imagine being the old man, and he's going to have to translate raw experience into words, right? Like, hey guys, this really amazing wild thing happened to me, and I think it's really important. I want to share it with you. Okay, and then language after language after language after translation, and then we get it in English, right? There is never ever a one-to-one mapping of any word to anything in the entire universe. Language is always squishy, contingent, contextual, fungible. It's just language. Anyone in your life ever says, well, now you're just making up words, or guess what? All words are made up. They're only useful in terms of like saying, will you please bring me a cup of tea? Then they're very useful, as long as we all agree with what all those words mean. Okay. That being said, none of the different ways of conceptualizing and understanding practice is the one right and true way, no matter how many people will tell you that their way or their teacher's way is the one right and true way. It's never that easy. All of them fall under the heading of method. Here's a way to think about this. Here's a way to do this. And most traditions and most people have their way, and that's great. It took a long time of trial and error to get their way together. Wonderful. And I was listening to this talk of this teacher who presented this kind of way of thinking about models of control versus models of release. And if you're keeping score at home, the teacher is Alan B. Wallace, who's an outstanding Tibetan teacher. And he was talking about, and he was like, okay, well, here's different ways of doing it. Now, here's the way you sit. And he said, put your left hand down and put your right hand on top of your left hand and then touch your thumbs. And I was laughing to myself because in Soto Zen, it's the exact opposite. So much so that a friend of mine went to a Zen practice group for the first time. And he was probably, had his hands like this or something. And he had his eyes closed and thought he was doing a really good job until someone walked up and grabbed his hands and pulled them apart and put them the right way. And he was like, well, I'm never going there again. Like, I'm good. I'm done. Please don't touch me with my eyes closed without consent. That's really weird. But it was just so interesting. And the symbolism behind, the way this teacher was explaining the right way to hold your hands was beautiful. I loved it. But it just was one of those examples to me of like, oh, this is just a different way of slicing the pie. This is just, we do it this way, and other people do it other way, and that's fine. It's part of what it means to grow up. Figure out what works for you. Okay. And as long as it's motivated by love, by compassion, then it'll probably work out okay. All right. So, there's a problem And that starts with a P. And that rhymes with, I didn't even work this out before, so I'll drop it. But basically, the whole Buddhist tradition starts with the problem. This guy was really big on the good news, right? Hey, guess what, y'all? Suffering. It's a problem. You've got it. I've got it. Everybody's got it. What are we going to do? So, and the old man was very clear that the heart mind is naturally luminous, is naturally infinite, is naturally ungraspable. But things get in, don't they? Traumas, habits, patterns, what the old man called kleshas, which very neatly translates, I think, to neuroses, psychopathologies, the ways that we get hooked, the ways that we get caught, the patterns that we start to develop around stressors, anger, aversion, frustration, jealousy, fear, clinging, grasping, hankering, etc. So, why? Think of a clear mountain stream. Think of this beautiful spring bubbling up from deep in the earth, bubbling out some beautiful place in the mountaintop. And over time, over distance, it starts to get polluted, right? Impurities start to get in there. And especially if it's somewhere that a factory is using that water. It gets full of contaminants, pollutants. And the control model, using this kind of idea of our heart mind, which the Buddha called a stream, our mind stream, getting polluted, the control model says, I know what to do. I'll fix this. I will add remedies and anti-agents, antidotes to various pollutants, antibacterial agents, and you can see this as the various practices, right? So many practices to kind of counteract our habitual ways of clinging and grasping and freaking out and shutting down and closing off, etc. Or even like setting up robust structures to avoid it getting polluted more in the future. This is the control model. It's a very effective orientation. It gives us something to do which very much suits our kind of nature, right? I got to do something about this. I'm having a problem. How do I fix it? The release model rests on the understanding of the fundamental nature of our mind stream, of our heart mind. The impurities and pollutants in our mind stream are not the nature of mind. They're adventitious. They come along later. You probably didn't know until the first time that you got your hand slapped when you reached for something beautiful when you were in the grocery store when you were a child. You probably didn't know you weren't supposed to do that until that happened. And then it happened enough times maybe that you learned to stop reaching for beautiful things in the grocery store. Right? That model works for anything at all. The first time you got your heart broke, the first time you tried to communicate and it came out wrong, or you were misunderstood, etc., etc., etc. These things happen over and over and over again. But that's not how our awareness naturally is, right? Habituation, tendencies, these things come along later. So, the release model relies on the kind of natural qualities of our heart and mind, luminous. What does that mean? You don't see the light streaming out of the fixture, right? But it illuminates everything it touches. That's how awareness works. Anything awareness works, you can see now. It's like when you think to yourself like, oh, what's going on? Oh, that's what's going on for me. Or think of like you touch a thing, and your sensory apparatus carries an electronic signal to your brain. You say, oh, I'm touching the table. It's cool to the touch. It's like this, it's like that. That's how awareness works. This is the kind of And using that example of the mind stream, of the polluted stream, what happens to a stream in nature if you stop polluting it? It'll just naturally work itself out. Anybody in town during the first lockdown? The sky was beautiful, right? Like, I couldn't believe how clean the air was. And it was so fast. It happened so fast. We just took some cars off the road, some trucks off the road, some planes out of the sky, some boats out of the shipping lanes. And I was wandering around my neighborhood being like, is this how the world actually looks when we just give nature a minute? That's how our mind is too. Our awareness is naturally always trying to work itself out. It's trying to make that connection. As long as we stay out of its way and actually learn to stay out of our own way, we can actually start to heal. This is like the magic of practice, right? Any kind of practice. You can just start to refrain from causing our own problems, from getting in our own way. Now, talking about doing less or talking about not doing something is a little more difficult than talking about doing something, right? So I'm going to use the problems with the control model to kind of talk about why the release model works. So everybody in this room, don't think of a purple penguin. Don't think about, stop thinking about it. Stop thinking, stop it. Don't think about it. Or don't think about that really scary email you have to send. Don't think about that person at work who drives you crazy. Don't think about that hard thing you have to do in a week. Stop it. Don't, right? It doesn't work that way. Mind naturally, when we resist something, it gets stronger. When we resist, we're pushing up against something. It's like when you're in the water and you're like flowing and like, oh, water's so soft and this is so nice and the waves are gently washing me. Try to stand up against a wave and watch it slap you. Just wow. Has anybody in this room been hit by a big wave? Yeah, my whole life getting thrown about by waves. It's like when you resist a thing, it generally will get stronger, will get harder. By resisting the impurities in our mind, in our heart space, they generally get stronger by resistance. We lend them our energy. So imagine you're meditating and you're trying not to do a thing. You're trying to, I'm focusing on my breath, I'm not going to think about lasagna. Chances are you're going to be thinking a lot about lasagna. The control model can also be a little bit fragile. Generally speaking, when we're trying to cultivate attention and concentration, we're susceptible to our environment. If our environment is noisy or busy, or we have a lot of responsibilities that we can't just drop, if we're not like a hermit living in a mountain monastery somewhere, we have to attend to our loved ones, our children, our, friends, family, neighbors, etc. It makes the control model a little bit fragile when you can't have a really highly hermetically controlled environment all the time. It makes you susceptible to the kind of vagaries of existence. Also, if there's pain in the body, if there's sickness, it makes you susceptible, makes it fragile. It's hard to concentrate when you're sick. It's hard to concentrate when you're tired. So, what the hell is the release model? The release model, in the release model, instead of using a specific object like, what's it, the number one common thing that is our meditation object when we're using the control model, when we're focusing on our meditation? What? Breath. Could be anything, right? Different traditions will use a mantra or a visualization or sensations in the body or ambient sounds. That becomes our object, the object of our focus. And what do we do when mind gets distracted from the object of our focus?
Go back to the breath.
We bring it back, right? That's the control method. The release method is the opposite. This way of practicing is often called settling the mind in its own place. It's also called concentration without an object. What we do is, instead of taking our attention and putting it somewhere, and making it sit there and think about what it did. Haha. And when it goes away, we bring it back. Instead, we just stay with the field of awareness exactly as it is. In a strange kind of jujitsu, it's called, concentration without an object, or meditation without an object, or non-meditation. But really, the object becomes the entire cosmos. Anything that touches the field of our awareness comes in, let it come, let it be, let it go. I'm just holding this giant fishbowl, which is my awareness. So instead of me being like, I'm paying attention to this or that or this part of my experience, I'm just holding my entire experience in my open hands and letting whatever comes, come, and whatever goes, go. And that includes thinking, memory, all those things we're not supposed to do when we meditate, right? Okay. Questions? Brief. Yes, sir.
Just thinking about interference.
Yes.
With that, would one of the things coming through stay there or become an obstacle? I'm not sure how that works.
They're properly speaking, in a completely open release model of practice, there are no obstacles to practice, because whatever comes is for however it lasts, is an object in our awareness, but not the object. You could think of it like, well, whatever comes will be my object. And that's fine. That's a good way to think about it. That way, okay, that sound in the room is my object for now. Oh, it's gone. Good, okay. Now, whatever else coming is the object. Does that make sense?
It does.
So that's the other thing about the control model. Things become obstacles very quickly when we decide, this is what I'm paying attention to, and anything else is a distraction. Okay, any other questions about that? Yes, sir.
It sounds like in the release model, it's concentration building also.
Oh yeah, good catch. Yeah, so shamatha is the traditional word in Pali for concentration-based practices. And generally speaking, the control model is any kind of shamatha, any kind of concentration practice with a specific discrete object. In the release model, it's shamatha or concentration with awareness as the object. Which is a little tricky, right? Because awareness is never the object, it's always the subject.
Is that what the Japanese they call shikantaza?
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. Shikantaza, Mahamudra, Dzogchen, these could all be thought of as techniques that rely on a release model. Yes, sir?
And so clinging isn't really as much of an obstacle in the release model as...
Clinging can be what's happening right now.
Right.
Right now I'm clinging. Right now I'm aversive. Right now I'm frustrated. Right now I would rather do anything. I'd rather chew my own arm off than meditate. And the resistance becomes... And all these things in the end are just your own mental energy anyway. They're just the play of the mind anyway. They're not foreign to you. They're not outsiders, truly speaking. Even a sound. If I'm meditating and I'm doing the control model and my neighbor is like mowing the lawn, thank you. I swear, the gardeners, they know when I'm sitting. And they're like, go, go, go. But if I'm trying to meditate and the gardeners come and the object is my breath, then any time I'm getting frustrated about the gardeners and thinking about that instead, I'm failing. It's a problem. I'm getting distracted. But in a wide open model, in a release model, the sound, my feelings about the sound, my resistance to the sound, my resistance to my feelings about the sound, whatever is arising. The reason this works is because your mind is functionally infinite. There's no limit. There's no obvious hard limit to what you can hold in your heart mind. And it's easy to think we're very tiny, very small, fleshy people that walk around and that's all there is to it. We go bonk, bonk, But actually, your whole experience is the play of your own awareness, and it's always happening right here anyway. So your experience could be your whole practice, which opens up the field vastly. Instead of like, I only meditate on the breath, and only then when I'm calm. And that's all that's welcome here. That makes our practice really brittle and shallow. I mean, shoot, your practice could be about how much you hate meditating today. Or how strange and annoying the teacher is and why is he talking about this stuff that doesn't make any sense. And that can be your practice. So, all right, that being said, again, trust me, that was like 1/5 of all the stuff I wanted to say, and I'm sorry for bashing you over the head with it, but there'll probably be a full day on this because I love it. It's when you so I trained in control models my whole life, from tantric Hinduism, which, relying on a mantra and a visualization and a yantra and a whole ritual practice, this whole really complicated ritual framework as an object for my practice. And then I got into Buddhism and was training with the breath as the object, and the sensations in the body as the object, and various kinds of, again, control model. Nothing wrong with it, by the way. The control model is great, is very powerful, very effective. And you should have both in your tool bag, and even use both within the same sit, moment by moment. There's skillful ways of applying these things all the time. But the first time I started practice, and it was accidental, what happened was I started reading some of the literature around Dzogchen and Mahamudra and Shikantaza, these practices that are more release model. And the first time I read someone writing, don't do anything with your mind. And I was like, what? I don't have to do anything with my mind? Don't do anything. Whatever's arising. Don't meditate. First time I ever heard someone say, don't meditate, you're a bad person. That's not, I know I'm supposed to meditate. Don't meditate. Don't make it a thing. Don't make it weird. Just rest. So, all right. I don't see any hands up, so let's do a little non-meditation. In a way, it involves a certain amount of trust that the fundamental nature of your heart and mind is actually luminous. And the great part about this is you can fidget, you can be nervous, you can be restless. You don't have to apply any antidotes or counteract anything at all. Rage comes, great, here's rage. Jealousy, anger, nervousness, frustration, whatever comes. Okay, guys. It helps with release models because there is less doing to get nice and relaxed. Whereas probably one of the glories of the control model is you don't have to be very relaxed. You can just go right from doing a spreadsheet or traffic or feeding your children to focusing on the breath. But the release model asks something that's maybe a little hard for us. Don't do so hard. Do less. Okay. So beginning with allowing the body to come to a restful posture. even the idea of allowing the body, not making the body, allow the body to come to rest. And then allow the breath to come to rest. Let the breath do whatever it wants. There is no need to control or manage your body or your breath. And I invite you, rather than gathering your attention on your body and breath, I invite you to just sit there without technique, without agenda. And if you notice that you are trying to manage your experience in some way or control, just let go. You will probably notice that mind will very naturally set itself up with some projects, like thinking about this or that, or stopping thinking about this or that, or trying to get more relaxed, or trying to energize. And when you find yourself embarking on some project, let it go, put it down, and just rest. For some of us, this is profoundly difficult. So by way of contrast, and as a support, I invite you to gather your attention very strongly on your breath with great diligence. Go right into the control model and notice every in-breath and every out-breath. And then at a time of your choosing, let it go. And meanwhile, everything is still happening. Mind is minding. Heart is hearting. Senses, sounds. I'm just inviting you to take a break. I invite you to just rest and allow the following words to wash over you. You don't have to do anything with your mind. Just let it naturally rest in its essential nature. Your own heart-mind, unagitated, is reality. Know the truth beyond opposites. Thoughts are like bubbles that form and dissolve in the clear water of your mind. Therefore, thoughts are not distinct from your mind. So simply relax. There is no need to be critical. Whatever arises, whatever occurs, simply don't cling to it. And don't push it away. Whatever you see, hear, and touch are your own mind. This deathless awareness is pure, luminous, and vast. In this deathless, there is nothing to renounce or attain. So rest joyfully.